Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Gekkan Shoujo Nozaki-Kun Episode 7, The Manga Artist's Brain, Nozaki-Kun. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief reminder of what happened in the episode. So the episode begins with Sakura learning that Nozaki finished his manuscript early and therefore has some days off. But after he'd cleaned his house and everything, he had realized he has no hobbies, so Sakura decides to invite him out for a day of fun, and they head to the mall together. She works herself up wondering if it could be a date, but eventually realizes that that's not what it is. But anyways, they initially go to the mall, and they start with the movies, and Nozaki wants to see basically a action horror movie about a school being destroyed because it shows the school in multiple angles and he thinks he can use that for his manga. They then go shopping at a clothing store and Nozaki looks for clothes that Mamiko would look good in before trying to get Sakura to wear a sailor uniform because he wants to see how the collar would look because it's difficult to draw from memory, which she of course declines. Then they go to a hobby store and run into Mikoshiba in the figures section, and he's incredibly embarrassed for being caught out in this figurine section of the hobby store that Sakura and Nozaki end up in, and then Nozaki basically says that the figurines would actually be pretty good for him for drawing because they're 3D, and if he puts like median lines on them, they would be great reference. So he goes to find a proper doll, and Sakura gets herself worked up thinking that she's going to learn what Nozaki's type is, but he comes back with a Suzuki doll instead of like a female figurine, which of course disappoints her. Then after that, they head over to the art store where Nozaki tops up his art supplies, while Sakura also gets some things as she's currently specializing in watercolor but is thinking of starting oil painting soon and needs some supplies for that switchover. Then, as they're walking home after their day of fun, Nozaki invites her over to the house, and for a moment she gets her hopes up, but then we see that he just made extra food and she's helping him to eat the leftovers, and she basically scolds herself for getting her hopes up because she knew it wasn't actually going to be anything intimate. We then move on to the second half of the episode where Sakura approaches Mikoshiba to be a model for the art club and he declines. However, then one of the other girls from the art club that he's not as comfortable with comes over and invites him, and he falls into his old habits of saying things he doesn't mean and flirting when he doesn't mean it, and basically agrees to be the model for the art club. As soon as she walks away, he turns to Sakura, but Sakura, being a little bit upset that he said yes to her but not to Sakura, basically says she's not helping him out of it. Then we get to the actual modeling, or no, then we get to Mikoshiba at home looking through a looking through a magazine and learning that an S shape is the most attractive shape, and he gets into some weird worm-like pose on the floor, realizes he looks ridiculous, then realizes that figurines, like action figurines, would be a perfect inspiration, and behind him we see all these like superhero figurines. But then he starts to mimic the figurines he has, and he only has female figurines in suggestive poses, so he realizes he can't copy them. But then we see the next day he and Sakura are walking through the hall, and Sakura assures him that the art club will be choosing his poses, so he doesn't have to worry about that in the end. And then he gets to the art club, and each of the girls take turns putting him into various poses, which all seem to fit a certain scenario that the girls have in their head, with Sakura choosing Nozaki drawing manga as her pose. And then eventually Nozaki comes in and he watches the art club perform before they offer the chance for him to do a pose. And so then he poses not just Mikoshiba, but then the entire art class and draws them all. Once all of the posing is done, one of the art club members basically compliments Mikoshiba's modeling and then asks if he'd be willing to model for them again. And having just gotten to that place where he's getting comfortable and letting his guard down, but isn't yet at a comfortable enough place to say no, he goes a little overboard with the words that he doesn't mean and promises to be a nude model the next time. And he's, of course, then curled up in the corner, like so depressed that he promised this or said this. And Nozaki comes over and says, "It'll be all right, Mikoshiba. When you nude model for them, make sure you let me know so I can come too." And it's an excellent ending to the episode. Now that we've been reminded about what happened in the episode, it's now time to rank the episode. As always, we'll be ranking on our two lists, our mostly objective ranking list, followed by the personal ranking list. Now, I really struggled here with the mostly objective rank values because we didn't really introduce any new characters. We didn't really learn anything new about any of the characters. Uh, it was really difficult to find if anything on the chart at all would apply in this episode. But ultimately, I decided that the multi-episode main character growth could apply to multiple of the characters. Like, we learned that Sakura is going to be learning oil painting. She's obviously growing her art skills through this whole modeling thing here. She managed to work up the courage to invite Nozaki out, even though it didn't end up being a date like she had hoped. She still had worked up the courage to spend the day with him and ask him to go with her. Mikoshiba starts to overcome some of his shyness in that, like, obviously he regretted it when he agreed to model, but then he still shows up to model. He doesn't chicken out completely this time like he did with the mixer. And as the day goes on, he gets more comfortable with the modeling to the point where he puts his foot in it and says he'll be a nude model next time. So, and even Nozaki, when he comes and observes the art class for a little bit, he manages to come up with a whole manga idea while he's watching all of um the other members of the art club with Mikoshiba. So I feel like it could be said that there was some minor growth in each of the characters, though it was all minimal for each of the characters. But altogether, I figured it could be worth at least the 4 points. So that is what I decided to give this episode is multi-episode main character growth, and that's a combined growth between Sakura and Mikoshiba. So this episode is 4 points objectively. All right, so for our season one rankings so far and our mostly objective ranking, in first we have This Love is being turned into a shoujo manga. Say hello to the new heroine, the man who envisions love. I'll cast a spell on you. There are times when men must fight. Violence versus the prince. And this episode comes in last, the manga artist's brain, Nozaki-kun. Now, for my personal opinion on the episode, I think that it was a nice episode, a bit of slice of life. There was a little bit of comedy in the second half with the posing, especially when Mikoshiba was, practicing his posing, but the day before, and then also when he's being put into the really specifically named poses for the art club. These are amusing moments, but there was no laugh out loud moments. It very much was more like sedated slice of life as opposed to actual comedy. And that's not bad. It's just that honestly, I watch this show for the comedy of it because I think it's one of the most funny shows that really exist. And even like the manga that the show is based off of is probably one of the funniest I have ever read. And so for me, this show really shines on the comedic moments, and this episode was kind of lacking that. Also, like I said, we didn't learn anything new about the characters. We didn't really meet any new characters. Well, I guess there was the art club people, but none of them had names, so I don't know that that actually counts. But it was nice. It wasn't what I was looking for from the show, and it just wasn't that funny. It was amusing, but it didn't have any of those major laugh out loud or even really chuckle out loud moments. It was more like internal amusement that maybe showed itself in a smile on the face, but not into anything that would be like verbalized because it just wasn't that funny or funny enough to get there. I have, though, come to the realization that most likely my favorite character is Mikoshiba because I really always enjoy the episodes he's in usually. And even in this episode, the parts I liked most about the episode were the parts that had Mikoshiba in it. So I have decided that I think he's probably my favorite. And that is probably also why this episode scored as high as it did, even though, like I said, it didn't really hit well for me, in that it didn't really give me anything that I was looking for in the series. I gave it a 3 out of 10. And the 3 was pretty much made up by Mikoshiba's funny moments. So, that then brings our season 1 ranking so far on the personal ranking side to in first, There Are Times When Men Must Fight, Say Hello to the New Heroine, I'll Cast a Spell on You, This Love, is being turned into a shoujo manga, The Man Who Envisions Love, Violence versus the Prince, and then this episode for me as well is in last place so far, and that is the manga artist's brain, Nozaki-Kun. Bringing us to the final segment, which is our series ranking so far. And on our mostly objective ranking, we currently have a score of 54 out of 120. Then on the personal ranking, season 1 so far has 51 points out of 220. Or not 200, 100. Oh my goodness. 51 out of 120. So with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Gekkan Shoujo Nozaki-Kun, Episode 7, The Manga Artist's Brain, Nozaki-Kun. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.